Alright, I said something in a video the other day which a couple of people sort of took offence to, and that was to do with cheap transmitters. Now I did put the caveat in there that if you can afford an expensive transmitter, go ahead and buy one. Alright, I've got a DX6i, which is probably low range for a decent transmitter really. It's not the cheapest you can get, but it's by far from the most expensive either. But 6 channels, some decent range of mixing options and things like that. And so while I had a go at, do you need this to fly, a $65 airplane? Why might you want one to fly a $65 airplane? Now, you got to remember that even one of the cheapest transmitters you can find is going to cost you about $24 for your transmitter and receiver package. Okay, now you can be binding that up to multiple planes and all this other stuff, and it'll do the job. But the more expensive computerized transmitters, what they've got is they've got what's called model memory, which means you can bind however many different planes to your transmitter and it remembers all the settings for you. There's no going back having to remember what the trims were set on, what the mixes were set on, what channels need to be reversed and whatnot. It totally takes that danger out where you plug it into another plane, you forget that you had to reverse a channel, you toss it, you go to pull out and you nosedive and smash your plane. Gets rid of that completely. The other thing is cheap transmitters can be a bit of a pain because a lot of them they've got switches on the front and they'll have 5 switches. And 4 switches will reverse the channels and then you flip the other switch and then that's mixing. Sometimes what you'll find is as soon as you flip the mix switch to mix elevons or whatever you like, your channel reversing all goes away. With a computerized transmitter, you don't have that problem. I missed a bit. So in the end, what you're looking at is, say you buy a decent 6-channel remote with a 7 to 10 model memory, and it's basically a safety feature, okay? All your mixes are going to stay right. You don't have to worry about tracking what's got to be reversed, what doesn't got to be reversed, making your mistakes. What are you really paying for that safety feature? Like say you could buy a decent one for about $60 plus freight. And when you look at it, you're paying $24 for a really cheap one. Now to get that same sort of functionality, you got to buy $24 worth of transmitter for every single plane. So by the time you're at the end of your 3 planes, the transmitter's paid for itself. And not only that, you don't need to go to the trouble of having onboard mixers so that you can flick your switches and reverse the channels that you need. Alright, and the other thing I can tell you is I love my DX6i. Okay, I've got a couple of cheaper transmitters at home. I use them, I don't mind using them. I'm only flying $65 airplanes. It's not like I'm flying a $4,000 turbine jet or anything. A few glitches here and there or whatever is not likely to make a huge amount of difference. And if something does go wrong, they're foam planes, I can just build another one. But this, right, just holding it in your hands feels completely different. Okay, this feels like a decent transmitter. Okay, I feel a lot more confident with this transmitter in my hand than anything else. And when you're first starting out especially, confidence can be a big deal. When I first started out, I'd cheat this, I'd cheat that, I'd cheat the other, and everything like that. And there was a certain amount of satisfaction and freedom in that. okay? No matter what I broke, it wasn't going to cost me the bank and I could afford to replace it. But one of the things that wasn't always there was confidence that everything was going to work like clockwork every time. Once I had this and I knew that I wasn't going to have to be worrying about interference issues and things like that, and you know, I could fine tune everything exactly as I wanted it, my confidence grew by leaps and bounds. Okay, I had this and a week later I was pulling off tricks that I would never even have thought of trying before, just because I had the confidence in my transmitter that if something went wrong, I was going to be able to retain control, and it was going to be quick and it was going to be precise, and I could get myself out of it before I did any damage. Confidence is a huge issue, you know. So regardless of what I've said before about, you know, if you have to get a cheap transmitter to get into flying, do it. If you can get an expensive transmitter when you get into flying, do it. Okay? It's going to be one of the best purchases you made. I spend $11 on motors, I spend $11 on speed, I mean $65 all up on an airplane, except I walked out and spent $250 on this, which is, you know, really 3 airplanes, and I have never regretted it once. If you can afford a decent transmitter, walk out and get one. That is the best piece of advice I can give you.